Welcome back to Secret Chapter. There are some truths you spend your whole life looking for, and there are others that find you when you least expect them and wish they never had. I learned this lesson on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in a house that wasn't even mine, holding a small leather-bound book that would change everything I thought I knew about love, about trust, and about the woman I had given my heart to. My name is David. I'm 47 years old. And until that day, I thought I understood my life. I thought I understood the choices I'd made. I thought I understood the woman sleeping in the next room. I was wrong about all of it. It started the way most mistakes do, with good intentions. I had a property, a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town that I'd inherited from my grandmother. After she passed, I couldn't bear to sell it. Too many memories, too much of my childhood lived within those walls. So instead, I decided to rent it out. Not for the money, I was doing fine financially, but because the thought of it sitting empty, collecting dust and loneliness, felt wrong somehow. I placed an ad online. Simple, nothing fancy. 2-bedroom house for rent, quiet neighborhood, good schools. Available immediately. Within hours, my phone buzzed with a message. Her name was Elena. Elena's first message was polite, professional. She asked about square footage, about utilities, about whether pets were allowed. Standard questions. Nothing that stood out. But then she asked something else. She asked about the neighborhood. Not about crime rates or noise levels, but about the trees. Were there old trees? Did the streets have that small town feel, where neighbors waved from porches and children still played outside until the streetlights came on? It was such an unusual question that I found myself smiling at my phone. Who asks about trees? I told her the truth. That my grandmother had planted a maple in the front yard when I was born. That it was huge now, with branches that spread across the whole front of the house. That in the fall, the entire yard turned gold and red and orange, and you could hear the leaves rustling from inside the living room. She wrote back, "That sounds like home." We arranged to meet at the property the next day. I arrived early. I wanted the house to look its best. I'd cleaned the windows, swept the porch, put fresh flowers in a vase on the kitchen counter, the way my grandmother used to do when company came. I don't know why it mattered so much. Maybe because this house still felt like her, and I wanted a stranger to see it the way I did. Not just as a building, but as a place where love had lived. Elena pulled up in a small blue car that had seen better days. She stepped out, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. She was beautiful. Not in a loud, obvious way, but quietly, gently. She had dark hair pulled back loosely, with a few strands falling across her face. Brown eyes that seemed to hold more stories than she would ever tell. She wore a simple sundress, the kind that catches the light when you move. And she smiled at me like she already knew me. "David?" She asked, walking up the path. "Elena," I said. And somehow, saying her name felt important, like I was acknowledging something I didn't yet understand. I showed her through the house. The living room with its old fireplace. The kitchen where my grandmother had taught me to bake cookies. The bedrooms small but cozy, with windows that faced the maple tree. Elena touched things as we walked. The banister. The window sills, the edge of the kitchen counter. Like she was memorizing the house through her fingertips. "It's perfect," she whispered, and I could tell she meant it. We sat on the front porch steps to talk details. Rent, lease terms, move-in dates. But the conversation kept drifting. She asked about my grandmother. About my childhood. About why I was renting instead of selling. And I found myself telling her things I hadn't thought about in years. Summer evenings catching fireflies in the yard. The way my grandmother hummed while she cooked. The sound of rain on the roof at night, when the whole world felt safe and small. Elena listened like every word mattered. When she finally left, I stood on the porch and watched her drive away. And I knew with a certainty that scared me that I wanted to see her again. She moved in 2 weeks later. At first, our relationship was strictly business. She paid rent on time. I fixed a leaky faucet. She texted to say thank you. I texted back to say you're welcome. Normal, professional, safe. But then small things started to change. She'd send photos of the maple tree in bloom. Or ask my opinion about paint colors for the spare bedroom. Or leave a plate of cookies on the porch with a note that said, "For the landlord who actually cares." I found excuses to stop by. The gutters needed cleaning. The porch light was flickering. The mailman had delivered a package to my address by mistake. Small reasons. Plausible reasons. Reasons that allowed me to see her for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes longer. We'd stand in the kitchen and talk. About nothing. About everything. About books we'd read and places we'd been and people we'd loved and lost. She told me about her parents, both gone now, about a brother she hadn't spoken to in years. About a marriage that had ended badly, leaving her with nothing but that small blue car and a determination to start over. I told her about my own divorce. About the emptiness of coming home to a quiet house. About the way my grandmother's passing had left a hole I didn't know how to fill. One evening, after a particularly long conversation, she touched my hand. Just briefly. Just lightly. But I felt it for hours afterward. I was 52 years old. I had been married. I had loved and lost. I thought I understood what love felt like, but this was different. This wasn't the rushing passion of youth. This was something quieter, deeper, like finding a warm room after standing in the cold. I started staying longer, making more excuses. Bringing dinner by accident, when I knew she hadn't had time to shop. Finding reasons to sit on that front porch with her, watching the sunset paint the maple tree in shades of gold. One night she kissed me. It was soft, gentle, the kind of kiss that asks permission instead of demanding. And when she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "I didn't expect this," she whispered. "Neither did I said. And that was the beginning. For 6 months, we were happy, truly happy. She moved from being my tenant to being my everything. I spent more nights at that little house than at my own. We cooked together. We laughed together. We talked until 2 a.m. about dreams and fears and all the things we should have said to people in our pasts. I met her friends, she met mine. Everyone commented on how good we were together. How natural. How right. I started thinking about forever. About asking her to marry me. About selling my place and moving into the house full-time, our house, the one where we'd found each other. But there were small things. Things I noticed but didn't question. Things that seemed unimportant at the time. She never let me in the spare bedroom, the one she used as an office. She said it was messy. She said she needed her space. She said all the things people say when they want to keep a door closed. Her phone was always face down, always on silent. If it buzzed late at night, she'd check it quickly, then turn it off without responding. Sometimes she'd get a look in her eyes. Far away, sad, like she was remembering something she couldn't share. I asked, once, gently, carefully, "Is everything okay?" She smiled and kissed my forehead. "Everything's perfect," she said. "I just have a lot on my mind," I believed her. Because I wanted to believe her. Because loving her had become the best part of my life, and I couldn't imagine that anything could be wrong. The Tuesday it happened started like any other. I had the day off work. Elena was at her job. She worked at a small marketing firm in the next town. I decided to surprise her. Clean the house, make dinner. Maybe plant some flowers around the maple tree the way I'd been meaning to do for weeks. I let myself in with the key she'd given me. The house was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows. Everything was exactly as we'd left it. I started in the living room, dusting, straightening, opening windows to let in the spring air. Then the kitchen. Then the bedroom, our bedroom now, with her clothes hanging next to mine and photos of us on a nightstand. The spare bedroom door was closed. It was always closed. Elena worked in there sometimes, she said. She kept her computer and her files and her private things. I never went in. I never even tried. But that day, as I passed by, I noticed the door wasn't fully shut. Just a crack. Just enough for me to see a sliver of the room inside. I don't know what made me look. Curiosity, maybe. Or something deeper, some instinct I didn't recognize. I pushed the door open. The room was small. A desk, a chair, bookshelves filled with binders and folders. A laptop closed. And on the desk, right in the center, a small leather-bound journal. The kind you buy at a bookstore. The kind people write their secrets in. I shouldn't have touched it. I know that now. I know that privacy matters. That trust matters. That some doors should stay closed. But I picked it up anyway. The first page was dated 5 years ago. Before I met her, before she moved to this town, before any of it. I started reading, and the world stopped. The handwriting was beautiful, looping, careful. The handwriting of someone who took time with their words. March 15th, another day, another lie. I'm getting good at this. Too good. Sometimes I forget which version of myself is real. I turned the page. April 2nd. He asked about my family today. I told him about my parents, about my brother, all of it true. But I didn't tell him about the others. I didn't tell him about the life I left behind. Maybe someday. Maybe when I'm ready. My hand started to shake. June 8th. I met someone today. His name is David. He showed me a house. He has kind eyes. He talked about his grandmother like she was still alive. I don't know why, but I wanted to tell him everything. I didn't. I never do. But I wanted to. I kept reading, page after page. Entry after entry. She wrote about us, about our first kiss, about the way I looked at her, about how scared she was, terrified that I would find out the truth. October 3rd. He told me he loves me. I said it back. And I meant it. For the first time in years, I meant it. But love doesn't erase the past. Love doesn't undo the things I've done. If he ever found out, he would leave. They always leave. What things? What past? What was she so afraid of? I flipped ahead. Faster now. Desperate. December 12th. The dreams are getting worse. I see their faces. I hear their voices. They ask me why. They ask me how I could do it. I wake up screaming, and David holds me, and I pretend it's nothing. But it's not nothing, it's everything. Who are asterisk, they asterisk. January 3rd. I went to the cemetery today. I haven't been in 2 years. 3 headstones. 3 names. 3 lives I destroyed. I stood there for an hour, waiting to feel something. Guilt. Sorrow. Anything. But I felt nothing. What kind of person feels nothing? 3 headstones. 3 lives destroyed. I couldn't breathe. February 18th. David wants to get married. He talks about it all the time. About forever. About growing old together. I smile and nod and change the subject. Because forever isn't possible for people like me. Forever is a lie I tell myself when I forget what I am. I reached the final entry. Dated just last week, March 5th. I know I should tell him. I know he deserves the truth. But every time I try, the words won't come. How do you tell someone you love that you're not who they think you are? How do you explain that the person they fell in love with doesn't exist? I am a collection of lies held together by a woman who doesn't deserve to be loved, and yet he loves me. And yet I stay. And yet I am still here, still lying, still pretending that I'm not the monster I know I am. The diary slipped from my hands and hit the floor. I stood there for I don't know how long, minutes, hours. Time didn't exist anymore. All I could see were those words. Asterisk 3 headstones. 3 lives destroyed. The monster I know I am. Asterisk the front door opened. David? Elena's voice. Happy. Surprised. You're here early. I thought I'd surprise you by coming home for lunch, but you surprised me first. I heard her footsteps in the hallway. Heard her approach the spare bedroom. Heard her stop in the doorway behind me. David? Her voice changed. Quieter. Careful. What are you doing in here? I turned around. She was standing there, still in her work clothes, her purse over her shoulder, her face pale. I looked at her. Really looked. The woman I loved. The woman I wanted to marry. The woman who had 3 headstones in her past and a diary full of confessions. Who are you? I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. She looked at the diary on the floor. Looked at me, and in that moment I watched something leave her eyes. The light. The warmth. The Elena I knew. It all just vanished. You read it, she whispered. Who are you? I asked again, louder this time. She closed her eyes, took a breath. And when she opened them again, she was a stranger. Sit down, David, she said. I need to tell you a story. We sat on the edge of the bed. The same bed where we'd held each other countless nights. The same room where she'd whispered that she loved me. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. She didn't look at me while she talked. She stared at the floor, at her hands, at anything but my face. 5 years ago, she began, I had a different life. A husband, 2 children, a house in the suburbs. The whole dream. I felt my stomach drop. I was miserable, she continued. Not because of them, they were wonderful. My husband was a good man, kind, patient. He loved me in ways I didn't deserve. My children were perfect. But I couldn't be what they needed. I couldn't be the wife, the mother, the person everyone expected me to be. She paused, swallowed, so I left. I just walked away. I told myself I needed space. Time to figure things out. I moved to another state, got an apartment, started a new job. I told myself I'd go back when I was ready. Her voice cracked. But I never went back. And then one day, I got a phone call. My ex-husband, had taken the children on a trip. A vacation. Something I was supposed to do with them, but I wasn't there. There was an accident. A car accident. I stopped breathing. All three of them, she whispered. Gone. In one moment, and I wasn't there. I wasn't ever there. I had abandoned them, and they died without me, and it was my fault. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. I went to the funeral. I stood in the back, wearing black, watching strangers cry for my family, my children's teachers, my husband's coworkers, people who actually loved them, who actually showed up for them. And I stood there, the one person who should have been in the front row, hiding in the shadows because I couldn't face what I'd done. She finally looked at me. That's who I am, David. That's the monster in my diary. A woman who abandoned her family and got them killed. A woman who has to live every day knowing that if I had been there, if I had been the wife and mother I was supposed to be, they might still be alive. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't think. I didn't tell you because I couldn't, she said. How do you tell someone you love that you're responsible for 3 deaths? How do you look into the eyes of a good man and say, by the way, I destroyed my family? I wanted to be someone new here, someone who deserved a second chance. Someone who could be loved without all the baggage and the guilt and the horror of what I did. She stood up. I understand if you hate me. I understand if you never want to see me again. I've hated myself every day for 5 years. One more person won't make a difference. She walked out of the room. I heard her footsteps down the hall, heard the bedroom door close. And I sat there alone, holding a diary full of secrets and a heart full of questions. I stayed in that house for 3 hours, thinking, remembering, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the story she'd just told me. I thought about the way she looked at children in the grocery store, the sadness in her eyes, the way she'd turn away quickly like it hurt too much to look. I thought about the nightmares she had, the screaming, the way she'd cling to me in the dark, whispering, I'm sorry, over and over. I thought about how she never talked about her past, how she changed the subject whenever anyone asked about her family, how she seemed to be carrying something heavy, something invisible, something she couldn't put down. And I thought about the diary, about the words she'd written. Asterisk 3 headstones. 3 lives destroyed. What kind of person feels nothing? Asterisk. But she did feel something. She felt everything. She just couldn't say it out loud. I walked to the bedroom door, knocked softly. Elena? No answer. I opened the door. She was sitting on the floor in the corner, knees drawn up, face buried. She looked small, broken, like a child hiding from something too big to face. I sat down next to her, not touching. Just present. I don't hate you, I said quietly. She looked up, eyes red and swollen. You should. Maybe, I said. But I don't. We sat in silence for a long time. I don't know what to do with this, I admitted. I don't know how to process it. I don't know if I can. But I know that the woman I've loved for the past 6 months isn't a monster. She, as a person who made terrible choices and paid for them in ways I couldn't imagine. She killed her family, Elena whispered. An accident killed your family, I said. You made choices that led to that accident. There's a difference. A painful, complicated, impossible difference. But a difference. She started crying again. Quiet this time. Defeated. I should have been there, she said. I should have been the mother they deserved. You should have a lot of things, I interrupted gently. We all should. But we don't. We make mistakes. We run away. We fail the people we love. And then we have to live with it. That's what being human is. It's not the mistakes that define us. It's what we do after. She looked at me like I was speaking a language she didn't understand. I'm not saying it's okay, I continued. I'm not saying I understand. I'm not saying anything except that I'm still here. I'm still sitting on this floor with you, and I don't know what happens next. But I'm not leaving tonight. That was 3 months ago. Elena and I are still together, but nothing is the same. We're learning how to be with each other in a new way. A way that includes her past instead of hiding from it. She started seeing a therapist. Someone who specializes in grief and trauma. Someone who helps her carry the weight she's been carrying alone for 5 years. She went to the cemetery for the first time since the funeral. I went with her. We stood in front of 3 headstones and she told me about each one. Her husband, her daughter, her son. She told me their names, their favorite foods, their dreams, the sound of their laughter. She talked for hours, and I listened. There are still hard days. Days when the guilt is too heavy. Days when she can't get out of bed. Days when she looks at me and asks how I can possibly still love her. I don't have an answer that satisfies her. I just know that I do. The diary is in a drawer now. Not hidden, but not out. She knows I read it. She knows I know everything. And somehow, that knowledge, that full, terrible, complete knowledge has brought us closer than any secret ever could. She still has nightmares, still screams sometimes, still wakes up reaching for people who aren't there, but now when she reaches, I'm there. And I hold her, and I tell her that she's not alone. I don't know if we'll make it forever. I don't know if love is enough to carry the weight of everything that came before. But I know that today, we're here, together, trying, and maybe that's enough. There rests a line in her diary that I've thought about every day since I read it. I am a collection of lies held together by a woman who doesn't deserve to be loved. She was wrong about that. She does deserve to be loved. We all do, not because we're perfect, but because we're human. Because we fall and fail and break and still get up in the morning, because we carry our dead with us and keep living anyway. The woman I love isn't the woman in that diary. She's the woman who survived. The woman who kept going. The woman who found the courage to love again, even when she was sure she didn't deserve it, and I'm the man who stayed. Not because I'm a hero, not because I have all the answers, but because when I looked into her eyes, after knowing the worst thing she'd ever done, I still saw someone worth loving. That's what love is, I think, not ignoring the darkness, but seeing it, really seeing it, and choosing to stay anyway. If you've ever carried a secret too heavy to share, if you've ever wondered if you deserve to be loved after the things you've done, I hope you find someone who stays. Someone who sees the worst of you and loves you anyway. Because we all deserve that. We all deserve someone who doesn't leave when the truth comes out. We all deserve a second chance. Even when we don't believe it ourselves. Thank you for listening to Secret Chapter. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. And remember, every life has untold stories. This is where they come to light. See you in the next chapter. Till then, take good care of yourself.